The Hot Down, written by Oliver Arnold, performed by Adam 11 Labs.
It turns out the future wasn't done with me. Am I unique, or do others receive these messages? If you have temporal visions or receive dispatches from the tomorrow, contact me. I sense that a new age of education is dawning, learning from the future. For those who have read my previous report, I have made a complete recovery. Thank you very much. But now you must learn about the situation under which I received this second spectacular timecast. I had only recently recovered from the effects of the first message when the following account of a year 2189 transportation nightmare reached me on September 24, 2018, while on the roof of my double-wide, where I doused yet another St. Elmo's fire. A powerful storm had me holding onto my AM antenna when out of nowhere a surge of energy struck and I lost consciousness. I didn't wake dead, but my mind was once again loaded with thoughts that weren't my own. The sender evidently understands our misconceptions about future transportation, warning us of its pitfalls, guiding us, and sending this information to our benefit. If this is the same person who sent the first report, I feel they have grown cautious, not aiming their transmission at the public anymore, but at trusted individuals. The government may be onto them like they are onto me.
Beginning of transcription. These times. After employing remote workers from space became unfashionable for many businesses, I found myself forced to relocate from the lovely Hawk to Earth in search of a job. "Tara, you'll have to pull your weight," a friend advised me. After mentioning that I always worked my best, he added that he was referring to my physical body weight. I looked down. Yes, it had been a while since I had dwelled under planetary gravity. My belly, looking much like a globe itself, would not carry well on Terra. It'd be an ugly sight and uncomfortable, but I had no choice. The limited job pool on the space station was unkind to a specialist such as myself. My wife, unfortunately, disapproved of our moving back to a soiled surface. "Did you know Earth is 30% dirt?" she asked, while presenting pictures of grimy pants and dirty shoes. She lectured me about arachnids, maggots, worms, and all the other unclean things that dwell in the ground. "These boots aren't made for walking," she said, pointing at her shiny magnetic hull scalers. "If I want to live on dirt, I'd move into the compost sector," she proclaimed. My wife finally ended her rant by asking, "What if I lie down and a tree grows through me?" I, in turn, explained the many benefits of Earth, that we could give our bonsai room to grow, perhaps whip out the old heirloom broom. But despite my angel's tongue, she would not budge. There was simply no way that she would use doormats again. She even asked her father to employ me at his lunar meatpacking plant, but I declined because of my regolith allergies, and thus I planned my singular surfacing. I remembered little in the way of transportation, as on the station we perform all errands per pedis. I consulted a friend regarding my options for riding down. "Should I book the shuttle in advance?" I asked, concerned with prices and schedules. "You'd be crazy," he said. "It's much cheaper to book at the transport hub. Traveling to Earth is like riding a bus these days." I nodded in agreement. "Get your shuttle tickets at the gate right before your flight. That's how you get the best deal." "You sure?" I asked, because I had already secured a job interview for the following day. "Of course! That's when they dispose of the leftover seats at fire sale prices. It's a trick a pilot taught me," he said with conviction. "Only suckers pay full price in advance." Makes sense, I thought, and took a nice long rest. After, I lazily dragged myself and my luggage to the transit sector, where I elbowed my way to the shuttle service counter. "One ticket to Earth, please," I said cheerily. "And make it cheap." "Yes, sir. When do you wish to fly?" asked the agent. "Right away," I hollered loudly and with a big grin. "Yes, sir. That'll be 1 zillion bitbucks." My enormous grin froze. 1 zillion bitbucks are the equivalent of the Milky Way's stars times all the sand grains on Earth. I swallowed. The agent smiled. "Yes, sir. This is why the adage down to Earth means sky high nowadays." I perspired. "We have 1 ticket left, sir," the lady continued, "and are otherwise booked for weeks." I gasped. "Yes, very pricey," she said. "My in-law is a ticketing executive and always advises us to book flights early." After appraising my miserable self, she added, You didn't fall for the pilot story, right? I resolutely shook my head and rushed off to the teleporters. There, I was informed that teleporting services had been out since the station's waste management began transferring all refuse to the back of the moon by teleportation. This was ill-received by the artificial intelligences controlling the systems. They would not work on a task so mundane and halted all teletransports in protest. The programmers had argued that most people were crap anyway and that the AIs wouldn't see any difference, but the systems had grown past such semantics and would not be persuaded. Now I only had one option left, I gulped, private transportation sector, where vendors offered all kinds of unregulated transportation services. A sea of signs, most of them red, greeted me when I arrived at the circle of storefronts resembling a food court. I looked for clues to what they offered and whom to trust. Zoom and boom, supersonic rocket services, read one sign. XX Eros rocket trips, read another. Not what I was looking for that day. Zoom sala boom. These are only a few examples, but you can see why my desperation deepened. I ended up choosing down and out rockets. They sounded speedy, and that was vital as I had lost precious hours. When I attempted to enter the tiny booking office, a salesman rushed from a neighboring booth and blocked my way. Sir, the rocket-tie-dressed man hollered, forget rockets. I ask you to reconsider. I looked the guy over. You do? But you're wearing a rocket tie. I pointed at his accessory. He pretended to just now notice. Oh, that's yesterday's. I worked in that industry all my life and finally switched. Rockets are no good. Okay, what's your suggestion? I asked. Fompression, the man said enthusiastically. Huh? I had never heard of this technology. Our advanced phase compression system untangles all your subatomic ribbons and compresses them in real time. Yeah! A loud voice yelled from behind.
It takes real time.
We ignored the shouter and my salesman continued. Are you aware that our bodies are mostly empty space? I wasn't and said, right. Sir, you wouldn't accept horrendous rates to transport a few tiny ribbons and the empty space between them. Before I could answer, he did. Neither would I. When I opened my mouth to speak, he continued. You're being charged for your 99% void. A rip-off. I raised my index finger, but he continued. You wouldn't want to reach your destination as a lesser you? We both shook our heads. He then patted his mighty belly. Although an advantage in certain places, he chuckled. I tried to skid sideways, but his belly stood in my way. I pondered his offer. Have you done it? I will definitely try it for my next vacation, said the salesman. So you haven't. We've been so busy transporting guests that I haven't found a chance. I thought you'd been selling this since yesterday. That too, I was convinced. Where do I sign? Lies! The voice from behind us shouted. He's never done it because he's afraid of getting phase-freaked. Phase-freaked? I retracted my signing hand from his paper. Yes! The man who had kept away now strolled over to us. You're not always decompressed correctly. According to the paper analysis, all looks well. Your body might even function, but to your fellow humans, you'll be a disfigured freak. The lanky man generated a digital stack of images. Here! They showed people with warped faces and too many eyes. I gasped. What is this? This is how their AI sees a person. I've reverse-coded it to output these pictures of what it considers a human being. How do you know all this? I asked suspiciously. I programmed it, the man exclaimed pridefully. I gasped and replied, Did you inform your superiors about this issue? The man nodded. They ignored me. The big-bellied salesman jumped between us. Nonsense! I again stood confused. Well, I asked the new salesman, what do you suggest? The cabled service I offer is much safer, he said while drawing an invisible line with his hands. How is it cabled? It's an elevator. Surely you've seen it. It goes all the way to Earth. I hadn't, but nodded and shook my head all the same. With this physical solution, there is no compressing yourself. Just get into the capsule and safely glide, using only nature's forces. The other salesman cut in. He isn't telling you about the tangling. Tell him about the tangling. What tangling? I asked in great confusion. When his Earth elevator tangled and wrapped around the moon 5 times. He held up 5 fingers. We unraveled it, replied the lanky sales guy dismissively. I stood, greatly confused, and checked the time. This had taken 20 minutes. I made up an excuse and fled. Would I crawl back to my wife and accept her father's job at the lunar canning plant? I plodded down the salvage sector with luggage in both hands when a voice hailed me from the shadows.
Hey, shh.
I saw no one. Up here. I looked up. Sure enough, on the ceiling in a corner hung a green humanoid outworlder. I hadn't met the guy, but recognized the species. They were known for their business acumen. Looking for a hot down? The creature asked, descending by elegantly rolling and twisting. If by down you mean to Earth, then yes, I replied. The being stepped into the light, and I saw its eyes. Oh, those eyes! This race from the helical system and Fractuous 12 had spiral pupils adapted to navigate their twirled home galaxy. Why pick your service? I asked the creature suspiciously. Is no fancy tech. Just a regular shuttle. Only one seat left, the helicon said with a stretched mouth that I deemed a smile. The being's eyeballs began to spin. At that point, I knew I wanted the seat. Very well, I said. How long will it take? Only a day, kind sir, I gasped. 1 full day? The alien considered this. Rome was also built in a day. It was true. Historic records proved that the Grand Terran City took a full day to erect. I wasn't convinced, though, and the alien grew apprehensive. Only 2,000, it quickly added. My eyes popped. This was a fraction of what other operators charged. I played it cool. Right. What kind of ship is it? The eco-friendly kind. Eco? I was surprised, although the alien was green after all. From reclaimed substances. I wasn't familiar with that process, but I was too excited to delay. Deal! I shouted, and extended my hand toward its lower tendril. We shook, and the creature produced a digital contract. Sign here. After the pixels had dried, the alien's face contorted into a full-mouthed grin. It then gestured me through a narrow opening. We ventured past stacks of junk to reach another aperture, finally leading into a rather spacious, albeit shoddy, hangar. At the center stood a platform complete with seats, passengers, and luggage on it. Robotic arms were arranged around the deck to serve drinks and snacks, I assumed. Surely this was the pre-flight lounge. The crowd was comprised of red aliens from Planet Furnace 13 and a few younger human flyers. I took a seat and waited for the shuttle's arrival when a surprising announcement sounded. Fasten seatbelts! Only then did I detect the safety belts by my seat. Where's the shuttle? I asked the alien attendant. Shuttle now come print, she said. The robotic arms around the platform whirred to life. I gasped. Was it really? I had to ask, is it printed around us? Yes, sir, but no concern. This is normal, the attendant assured me. I remained unassured. How long will it take? It print 1 day. 1 day? I repeated the words like an idiot. Yes, sir. Rome was also... Yes! I barked, gesturing the creature off. I hadn't much choice, and regardless, the inconvenience was worth the savings. Cacophonous grinding rose as aliens loaded shredders with refuse, feeding enormous nozzles that squirted the metallic paste into organized lines all around us. Was that my spider body from the hospital ordeal going in? No, that had been a dream. I followed the process with disinterest. Zip, zap, zip, zap, zip, zap. What did I know about recycled space travel? Was this a safe way to fly? What was the failure rate? I elbowed my neighbor. At the very least, I hoped for an invigorating armrest elbow war. Sadly, he was of the yielding type. Everything shook and vibrated and shook. To ease my mind, I decided to lose myself in the complimentary book film. I put on the experience headset, and the movie began. But all I saw were blurred lines, at times horizontal, sometimes diagonal, and then vertical. The printing arms showered the platform with high-frequency vibrations so incessantly that the show fuzzed beyond recognition. After getting a piercing headache, I summoned the attendant. There's only blur, I said, sounding like a ghost. Your experience is normal, 1 moment. The alien left and quickly returned. Action was taken. I was glad to hear this, but the rattling remained. For your comfort, sir. She handed me a goggly gadget of sorts. I studied the thing skeptically from all angles. De-wobble goggles these are, the alien said proudly. Compensate for the effect of shaking. This was a new and very alien approach to problem solving. I had heard of blur cancellation, of course, but stared rather incredulously at the head-mounted contraption with its gyros and screens. After attaching it to the headset, the blurred movie screen miraculously turned into tack-sharp vision. Sleep overcame me. I woke up to loud, sputtering noises. It must have been much later as the movie had finished. I peeked from under the mask. Indeed, something resembling a spaceship had formed around us. Delightful. But something was amiss. There was a distinct lack of, openings. I hailed the attendant. "Where are the exits?" "Openings not needed," was the surprising reply. "How will we deplane?" I asked. "Sir, that's rather obvious." And with that, she left. No other passenger seemed alarmed, and thus I too leaned back as the crew served pre-printed pre-launch cookies. When I reached into the jar, my fingers sank into a sort of goop, and I pulled my hand out in disgust. Brown dough flowed down my hand. "These are unbaked," I loudly observed. Once again, the attendant's reaction confounded me. "Of course, this is normal." All other passengers had arranged multiple blobs in front of them, but none ate theirs, yet no one complained. How this string of mysterious events would fall into place, I would soon fathom. The printing robots were nearly finished and began disassembling each other for parts. I could not help but marvel at this efficient process. How the aliens had copied nature's effectiveness was indeed astonishing. Suddenly, though, the arms sputtered, and the goggles slipped off my head to shatter on the ground. With one last hoarse and climactic cough, all printing ceased. I couldn't help but regard the rather sizable, unfilled hole in the ceiling. The crew addressed us. "More trash needed. Please contribute." The extraterrestrial pointed at the gaping opening. Everyone produced as many soup cans and pocket lint as they could. I handed them the shattered goggles, and with that last contribution, the gap was closed. Presently the shuttle moved. We launched, calming my worries. This is normal, I thought to myself and yawned. Must relax. I needed to be at the top of my game for the job interview. I felt chilly. "Blanket, please." The attendant came with an amused face. "You won't be needing, sir." "What? Why not?" "You're so funny." She brought me one anyway, but left with a grin. This was not normal. After an eternity of tossing and turning, the undulating drone of the shuttle's engines finally had me dozing off. Terrible dreams of hells and devils haunted me. I distinctly remember waking to the scent of baked goods. Hell smelled delicious. Was it breakfast time? I opened my eyes and wiped the nightmares from them. The devils remained, though, and it was hot. Scorching hot. Where my blanket had covered me, I only found a shriveled crisp. Somehow, the environment had an undulating blur to it. The devils turned out to be my fellow passengers from Furnace. The red beasts had disrobed and hung out by the exterior walls. I activated my personal fan, but the blades had melted and flopped around uselessly. What little breeze emerged turned into plasma. Hailing the attendant, I gestured at the floppy blades and my crisped blankie. "The ship's melting," I screamed. "Of course it is, sir. This is normal. Disposable shuttle, go vanish." I gasped, searing my lunges. "But what about us?" I stuttered, my hands digging into the oozing armrest. "I don't know about you, sir, but I'm a hologram," the attendant said, gesturing a magical puff of disappearance with her hands. I looked around. Not only were my fellow human passengers unalarmed, they calmly suited up, some quipping and laughing, even munching their now well-done cookies. An odd discoloration appeared on the wall behind them. I couldn't take my eyes off the spot. It changed from a light beige to brown, toward red, and next to blue. Suddenly a flame poked through as if someone had worked it with a blowtorch from outside. A hole opened behind the guys, and hasty tongues of multicolored flames licked through. My mind raced. Surely I wasn't the only one to have witnessed this.
Uh-oh.
Some passengers shouted in a delighted chorus. "The ship's adjusting attitude," one observed. "You know what that means," another said. They hollered and grinned. "No!" I screamed. "I don't know!" I jumped up and quickly grabbed a fire extinguisher, rushed to the flame, and sprayed. To my great surprise, the other travelers didn't hail me as a hero, but followed my actions bewilderedly. "Dude, where's your hafnium suit?" a younger Earth guy asked. "You don't look like you're from Furnace." "I'm not," I replied, panicking. Aren't you gonna scorch?" Yes, Is this an emergency? You're funny, man! Just then, the rear wall peeled away. I stood in a trance and would have perished had an alien not shaken me out of my daze and dragged me off. "Dude, you've got to suit up," a fellow human remarked matter-of-factly. "Yeah, gonna be a sick descent," another nodded. They high-fived. "To where?" I asked. "Earth, man," I asked the obvious question. "Aren't we landing?" "We are, but the ship isn't." "Dude, you're on an extreme re-entry adventure. Carve the thermosphere." The alien's fist bumped. "Ah!" was all I could think of. "You be in my situation." Finally, the wall behind the creature disappeared in an intense stream of flame, revealing outer space and the absurdly enormous globe of Terra outside. We were still high in orbit, not much lower than the space station, in fact. But by now, the first aliens had exited through holes in the hull. "Re-entry? Adventure? What does that mean?" I asked frantically. "The ship's gonna burn up," one guy said, reaching through a hole to the outside as flames licked around his arm. "We jump out and have a blast." "There's gonna be a blast too?" "No, man. We're the lizards that carved the troposphere," the guy said, and exited among my terrored stare. The next person in line came to the hole and said, "Better hurry, dude. The ship will be free ions in 5 minutes." "What about my luggage?" "Bring your hafnium box." "Hafnium?" I glanced through the ever-widening wall cleft just in time to see a tiny falling star that used to be my belongings. "Ah!" I visualized my body dissolving into colored flames and yelled at the attendant. "I need a spacesuit. Where's my suit?" "Over there in the closet," the attendant said. "See you on your next extreme re-entry adventure," she added, and vanished. At that point, the floor had liquefied. Upon my every step, streaks of ground pulled up like cheese on a pizza. I made poor progress and feared sinking through before reaching my suit. Eager tongues of plasma licked past the growing wall openings. I was doomed, a disposable astronaut on a one-way trip. I sweated profoundly, or was it my body's hydrogen burning? Or both? I would flare, reduced and removed, becoming free energy, during a disagreeable chemical process. My protons and electrons would leave a tiny nebula, perhaps not even that. Just then, a friendly spaceboarder came over and helped me forward. I had tears in my eyes, so grateful was I, or were they melting? I hastily Googled through the cabinets. Where did this word for search originate, I wondered, followed by, why am I thinking this now? I found a suit and put it on. "Good, you're suiting up, man," one of the young guys said. I slithered into the protective shell, and when the floor became vapor, I slid outside, the overwhelming orb of Earth stretching out before me. The sky was Earth. I spun erratically, and a group of Outworlders glided over to help. "Thank goodness! The ordeal is over!" I screamed at the guy holding my hand to guide me. "Ordeal?" the re-entry enthusiast asked, dumbfounded. "The best is yet to come." What's the best?" I stammered. "First relax," he told me. I did, and suddenly my pants were full. Luckily, the suit came with a nano-black hole at its bottom. Many other passengers still floated around the disintegrating ship, laughing, beckoning, and cheerfully recording my emerging. "We're gonna surf now!" The alien gestured flow with its tendril. "But first, we've got to correct our vector." It gave me a powerful tug, and we dove into the exosphere. A tinnital roar embraced me. Violent streaks of plasma shot across me, canceling any vision or orientation I might have had. My friend's guiding grip loosened, and I tumbled about helplessly. It wasn't long, though, before someone again assisted me, a guiding grip tugging and correcting me. The blind meteorite. "You're my Samaritan," I confessed to the creature tearfully. "Don't think so," it replied. "I'm a heater from heat." I gazed dumbly in the direction I assumed was up and, by chance, glanced at a bright star that must have been Hawk. That put a smile on my face. My vision cleared. Our velocity was lower now, and the descent quieted. A bright crescent formed on the planet's horizon and rapidly grew. The sun came up. Even with only a slither of the star visible, its brightness shone, blasted beyond imagination. Immense radiant heat struck me, and I could not imagine withstanding the entire star out here for even a second, suited or not. Experiencing nature and the cosmos in this direct way was entirely new to me. To my relief, we retreated from it, fleeing into the night. Everything darkened, not only the skies but the lands below. Few lights shone where we were headed, the North Pole. After minutes of this descent, I made out a ghostly blue-green glow. At first ahead, then suddenly all around us, streaks of undulating color appeared everywhere. The aurora borealis. I had seen this dazzling phenomenon many times, but being inside of it was something else. We were submerged in enormous glowing blankets of light. The aurora even reacted to us, like fluid streaming across. I stared dumbly at the immensely intricate shapes of the swirls and eddies, only to be outdone by the astounding ballet of a fellow borealis boarder in front of me. Some shot through the aurora, leaving holes. Others rode the crests and troughs of the luminescent waves as if they had substance. I became part of it when my hands sliced the ionization for a few playful minutes. Too soon, my buddy's tug interrupted me. He grinned and gestured. When I didn't comprehend, he pulled me onto the crest of one luminous wave and let go. I crashed right into the breaking borealis, yet at this point I had lost all fear. I observed the other boarders and noted their postures and how these affected their motion. I began experimenting. At first I bumbled, didn't hit the crests quite right, and slipped off. Even then, the effects on the glowy clouds resulted in fascinating whirls and ripples. My frequent failures washed right off the phenomenon and myself, not least to my buddy's amusement. Next, I swung heavily and took advantage of a large undulation on the borealis. A surge of ions gripped me, and I jolted with a force I wouldn't have attributed to a particle shower. Apparently, the interaction of solar wind and gravity produced a force that hadn't been explored much, other than by the thrill seekers I was with. Not paying enough attention, I tumbled sideways. Help! A laughing furnace friend helped me right myself. It astounded me that all this time we moved at 10,000 miles per hour. Then suddenly, the polar lights were above us. I wanted to go again now that I was getting the hang of it, finally experiencing exhilaration and fun. My human buddy shook his head. "Dude, it's magnetic midnight," he said. It was time to position ourselves for the landing. How this was to be achieved I had not considered until now. Fear and anxiety returned to my bones, and goosebumps formed on my skin regardless of the 1,500 degrees Celsius. The group assembled into a landing formation. As we reduced altitude, the surrounding flames ceased, the black void turned blue, and I experienced the peculiar color of Terra's sky that the ceilings of all bathrooms on Hawk are embellished with. I received a heavy tug and hand signals from my alien buddy, pointing down. Some in our group were already far below us. On the ground, I spotted a large rectangular structure. The first of our group hit the square and then glided down what seemed like a glacier, an action even more insane than our descent. But I was arguably pretty committed and concentrated fiercely. I could do this. I followed my friends as they shot down onto the enormous trapezoid of a trampoline-like surface, only to slip off it and onto a slide of ice with immense speed. Yet the rough surface slowed our movement quickly until we came to a rest precisely at the base camp's outer building. Shaka! Our kinetic energy is harvested, my friend informed me. Enough to power an Inuk Eskimo village for a week, he added. The Sky Slicker's support team then greeted us and served us hot grog. As we derobed, I and my newfound friends chatted. "We're going rafting on Io tomorrow. You coming?" they asked me. I hadn't considered that anyone would wish to redo our past 30 minutes, but of course these guys did, all the time. "Don't you people work?" I asked. "We're on a mission," I was informed. "Furnace scientists discovered a lack of awesome in the universe." I laughed. "How do you afford this?" "We clean mollusks off satellites," they explained, "for a small fee. We also sell bottled aurori." "But aren't all the burned-up shuttle ships terribly wasteful?" I asked. This outraged my mellow friends. "No, dude, they're planting much-needed ions into the tropopause." I then learned that the species from Furnace had been carving Earth's atmosphere for hundreds of years, far exceeding humans' first space flights. With a heavy heart, I left the friendly Borealis borders. What a sweet life they lived indeed, floating and free. If you ever experience the desire to burn without dying, this activity is for you. I am not one for cheap thrills and have never spaced or cyber-dived, but this atmospheric re-entry proved exhilarating. Now I had the minor problem of getting from the North Pole to Themerica for my job interview, and I sensed that my transportation worries had just begun. I will send reports on upcoming events, time permitting. Let me now, after this digression, find employment on Earth. End of transcription.
And thus ended the second transmission. A loud pounding at my home's front door roused me. The clock showed 4 a.m. I expected no one. Why had my perimeter alarm not sounded? The booby traps failed. I staggered to my feet, yet the men didn't wait for me to get to the door. After forcing their way in, the marshals seized my transmitter and all my slingshots. Broadcasting without license, they claimed, was the charge. It is now clear. The authorities don't want me to receive any further messages. Who knows? I might have become a personality in the future and stand in the way of powerful interests. All that remains are my thoughts. Good thing there are so many. I cannot allow these distractions, though. The broadcasts don't come to me unwarranted, unlike these police visits. I must move beyond my pursuer's grasp. History will not be kind to them.
The Hot Down, written by Oliver Arnold, performed by Adam 11 Labs.